What's going on, guys? Alex here with 814 EDC, and today I am ready to do my full review on the Kubey Knives Interflow. Now, this is of course, via the Lefty passaround group. It is a package deal with the Kubey Interflow here, and then the Vosti Knives Taloris. If you guys are, constant viewers on my channel, you probably have noticed that the Taloris review, was almost a week ago, or maybe a week ago, and I'm just now getting around to doing the Interflow video. Life's been really crazy recently. I'm filming this on Wednesday, June 5th. My wife and I are supposed to be moving into our new apartment this upcoming Saturday. We've been supposed to be moving stuff all week, but there has been some really, the apartment we were going to move into basically wasn't up to our standards. There was some stuff going on, so we had to talk to the leasing people at the complex we are going into, and we're hopefully getting into a new room, but we have to get things lined up timing wise, so everything's kind of up in the air right now. So life has been very, very hectic, and honestly, I just haven't had a lot of time to do videos. And to be honest with you, as many of you guys know, and probably can feel the same way, knife videos they're a hobby for me, so they get put on the back burner when real life stuff happens. So that's why my videos have been so sporadic, but I have a couple reviews I need to get banged out so I can ship stuff out to the next people, because I've had the knives long enough, and I just need to get them done. That way I don't have to worry about it for moving, and I can just totally focus on getting things moved and situated and stuff like that, hopefully when we figure out what's going on. So just a little life update for you guys. But yeah, we're going to talk about the Kubey Interflow today, and this knife is really rad. I'm going to say right away, I don't like the blade shape. I am not a huge fan of Tanto knives. They have to really speak to me in the right way for me to be a fan of them. I like the knife and pretty much everything else besides how it pretty much aesthetically looks. I'm just not a huge fan of the Tanto, but fit and finish, functionality, action ergos, everything like that, this knife knocks it out of the park. I really didn't know much about it until I saw Kevin put it in the passaround group, but it's a beautiful knife, beautiful model from Kubey. So starting off with materials, you guys can see it is rocking some beautiful frag tie scales with some blue accents. You have a blue pivot collar, you have blue back spacers and body screws, blue thumb studs, a milled titanium pot clip. I really like the pop of blue. I'm a big fan of anodized blue, especially when it's done in an accented way, where not the whole knife is, because sometimes anodized blue can kind of look a little bit cheap and a little bit worn in places. And I really do enjoy it when it is on the accents. Of course, you have a flipper tab, you have dual thumb studs, you have a beautiful hollow grind there on the Tanto blade. So you have a hollow grind here, and then a chisel grind up here, so it's compound grind. I'm not sure who the designer of this is, but it is NM390, which will go right there. Kubey's logo. As for internal milling, there are 4 pockets on the show scale side, and looks like 3 pockets on the frame lock side. This, of course, is a frame lock, like I just said. It's on bearings. And yeah, that's about it for materials. So as far as materials go, absolutely no complaints at all. M390 frag tie, multiple ways of deploying the knife. Really nice frag tie. I like the way that this is milled. It's not overly aggressive, so that is an easy 5. Some quick specs on the knife. So overall length from tip to butt is 8.11 inches. Blade length coming in at exactly 3.5 inches. Blade thickness of 0.15. Handle length is 4.61. And it weighs 4.7 ounces. So definitely a hefty guy, but it has a good substantial weight to it. It's not the weight where you're like, man, this thing's super heavy. It's the type of weight that you pick it up and you're using it and you're like, man, this just feels really good in the hand. And then the designer is James Lowe, which I am, again, not very aware of him. But yeah, so moving on to aesthetic. Now, like I said, I am not the biggest fan of this blade shape. The handle is pretty, it's decent. It's pretty neutral. You pretty much have a straight line. Tapers off here towards the back, rounds around to the back, straight line. And you do have pretty much a straight line. I mean, it's straight from here and here, and then it tapers off. But it's a very, very simple, very, very neutral handle shape, which I really, really like. Then you get up to the blade, which I can agree it's interesting looking. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm not going to go out of my way to, you know, buy something like this, but I can definitely appreciate it for what it is. As far as aesthetics go, though, this is something that I, you know, usually are pretty high on when it comes to knives and knife reviews. I don't know if I'm going to go 3.5 or 4. I don't want to be too hard. I'll go 4. I think 4 is fair. It's not like I think this knife is absolutely ugly. I'm just not a big fan of it. But I definitely can think it's interesting, and I definitely I know there's people out there that love a good Tanto and think that this thing is just the best looking thing in the whole entire world. But 4 out of 5 when it comes to aesthetic. Next up is action, and the action on this is dialed in very, very well. You guys can see it is nice and straight, dead center right there. Dual thumb studs as well as the flipper tab. The detent is pretty good for a frame lock. Thumb stud action pops right out of there. You do have to be aware of all the pressure you're putting on the frame lock. It definitely can be, you know, it can make the pressure a little bit harder to get out of there, but that's pretty typical with any frame lock knife. But thumb flick, as I just did it right there. Middle finger flick works really good. Just gives you a great popping motion. Pops right out of there. Flipper tab. It's a pretty pointy flipper tab and has jimping up there on the front to the top. You can do, of course, the push button as long as you are off of the lock bar. And then, of course, you can do the light switch. But it's just nice, snappy detent. You guys can see for the close. Drops to where the flipper tab is hitting my nail. And then all I got to do is basically a little bit of a movement. I mean, so right where my hand is now, not moving it, drops to my nail. I move my thumb, and you guys can see it's like 60% on the way home. And all you got to do is move the knife, and it does that every single time. Buttery, buttery smooth. No blade play at all, locked up really nice and tight, and you're getting that type of action. Can't complain at all. That is a 5 every day in my book. Really nice, snappy detent. Great close. You guys know I'm a big fan of the more controlled close and just like the free droppers. Yeah, those are fun to play with every once in a while, but these are just really nice because you can just settle into a nice rhythm with how you want to fidget with them. And this action is on point with the Interflow. Next up is acoustics. Now this is a titanium frame lock with plenty of milling. And you get really nice sounds. Do you get tings? Not so much. You get more of the meaty thwacks. You can get a little bit of a metallicness in there. But more so it's just meaty. And you really, you know, for it being a tie frame lock, you would expect more of those high-pitched, you know, rings and tings. And I'm just not getting those. But that being said, it is very, very good. Definitely, you know, higher than or better than average. I would say it's borderline great. You just are missing those high pitchedness, and for that, I'm going to give it a 4.5. I think that's pretty fair. I think it's better than a 4. Obviously not a 5 because again, you're not getting all the sounds, but I think a 4.5 is fair because it is very satisfying, and you know, you really just have a nice sound coming out of there with those. I keep saying meaty thwacks, but really that's just, you know, snappy, just crisp detents. 4.5 on the acoustics. Next up is Zergos. Like we've already stated in the video, already gone over it. This is a titanium frame lock. So you have 2 titanium frag scales, excuse me. And I've already stated that I really like how they milled the frag into it. Sometimes frag can be really, really aggressive and all the edges are kind of sharp. And sometimes it's barely on there, but this is like perfect. Right in the sort of the sweet spot of that where you're getting enough aggressiveness and enough texturing to be comfortable in hand, but you're not getting overly aggressive and you're not going to be, you know, ripping up your pocket and uncomfortable when you're gripping down on it. But I can get all 4 fingers in the knife very, very easily. I can kind of spread my fingers out a little bit if I want to. I can kind of jam them up, you know, up towards the flipper tab, the nice natural restriction point you got going on there, and have a little bit left over, but very, very comfortable knife. You do have a little bit of a ramp right there with some jimping for your thumb. The saber grip falls right into this natural position right there. Of course, you can hammer grip it as well as reverse hammer grip it, but that saber grip just works so well. And you can use this as sort of a landing choil, finger choil type thing, but you are very close to the blade. So I would be very careful and only do like very minimalistic cuts with this, because you would not want to slip up on there and slice yourself. So I found myself either like this with my thumb, or if you really want more control and more power over your cuts, you can land your thumb out in front of the ramp right here, kind of, you know, falls into that groove right there, and then you have really good power for specifically push cuts and things of that nature. The pot clip is a milled clip, you know, not much of a hot spot at all, and it's rounded off right here, no sharp edges or anything like that, so I barely can feel it. It actually is a very comfortable pot clip. You know, you usually can feel your pot clip in some way, shape, or form, but honestly, you know, the way that this is sort of flattened out on the sides, and it's nice and rounded, I really can't feel it, and that is a great thing. So very comfortable. Frag tie, awesome. Yeah, I mean, nothing to complain about. Pretty much raved the whole time about it, so that is getting a 5. Next up is carry. Now, like we said earlier in the video, it is coming in at almost 5 ounces, specifically 4.7, and it is a milled tie pot clip, so it's not going to be super deep carry, and it does have 2 body screws right there, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I wish that they would stick to, you know, 1 clip screws. I get it, it's more stability, you know, more structuring, more safety for your knife. I get that, but I just wish you would take 1 screw away, because you could go from, I mean, you're pretty much like this, you could go like that. But as it sits right now, you have about that much sticking about your pocket. Not the end of the world, but that combining with the fact that it is pretty heavy, it's not the absolute best carry, but you know, I think I've already said it, like, it's not heavy enough to where you're like, man, this thing is like a brick in your hand. It's more of that like good substantial weight to where you're like, you feel confident in using this knife, because you have that sort of weightiness to it. But when it comes to carry, I'm not going to knock it too much, but between that and the clip, you know, just kind of sticking up like that, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I've gotten more used to it over the years, and, you know, more so with me reviewing knives. Not the biggest deal anymore, but I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give it a 4. It wasn't my favorite knife to carry. Wasn't the worst, wasn't the best. So I think a 4 is pretty fair for it. But that leads me into my final category of price point / value, and of course, what I recommend this knife. So price point on White Mountain Knife's website. That's one thing I found interesting. The price point on Kubey's website, directly from Kubey, which the knife is in stock, is $220. Now, there are 3 different variations of this knife, which I kind of forgot to go over in the beginning of the video. I apologize about that. The 3 variants are this version. You can get a full anodized blue version with a belt satin, and then you can get a black. They're all tie frag scales, and the third one is blackened with like a bronze gold anodized accents. So I apologize for not giving that early in the video. But on White Mountain Knives, they are currently out of stock, but I wanted to put this on there because the price difference is kind of crazy. It's $220 on Kubey's website, but on White Mountain Knives, it's $176, which combine that with someone else's 10% code, and you can get that down close to like, you know, upper 150s, which I think is a really good deal for this knife. Even if you're paying full price, well, full price from WNK, 176 is good. I think $220, if you're buying it directly from, you know, Kubey's website at MSRP, I still think that's an okay price. I definitely wouldn't. I would wait for it to come in stock to White Mountain Knives, especially because you can get that 10% off code. And I mean, you're gonna be saving like, what, $15 at least, $17.06 or something like that. So you're gonna get it down into the 150s, which is a phenomenal price for that. But as it stands right now with 176, I think that's very fair. I think it's a good value. I think Kubey has really upgraded their game recently within the last year or so. Not only from their own production line, but as an OEM line. I know Kevin and Colin over at Depot Knives uses them a lot. I've had some other boutique brands being made by Kubey, and they are really closing the gap between them and Riot. And I don't think, I mean, it used to be Riot and then like QSP, Kubey, Kunwu, Petrified Fish, all those other, OEMs and manufacturers were like head and shoulders different. But now I think a lot of them are really closing in on re-aught, and I think Kubey is, you know, one of the front runners for that. They just make awesome knives. They do awesome work, and I think this is a great value. And can I recommend this knife? Absolutely. If you guys are a fan of how this knife looks, I think that's going to be your biggest thing. You have to be a fan of Tantos to like this, you know, to buy it for yourself, I feel like. So if you are a fan of how this knife looks, you're going to love how it functions, how it fits, you know, feels in your hand, works. Carry, you'll probably get used to it. So yeah, I can absolutely recommend this knife. I think it's a great knife, and I think it's a pretty solid value for 176, considering you're getting M390, beautiful frag titanium frame lock, mill titanium pot clip, good snappy detent, multiple ways of deploying the knife. So I think it's a 5 in the value department. So let me add these up real quick, and I'll get you guys a score, and then I'll get you guys on out of here. I'm trying to make my reviews a little bit closer to 15 minutes. This one's going to be like 16 and a half. Alrighty guys, so the Kubey Knives Interflow comes in with a score of 32.5, which lands it in the fantastic category. That's where most of my knives fall. I've had, out of all the knives I've done so far, the majority of them have landed in the fantastic category, and I think this is a fantastic knife. Definitely not for me with that blade shape, but again, if you guys are a fan of the blade shape, definitely check one of these out. I don't think you'll regret it. Really well made, and again, wait for them to come back in stock on White Mountain Knives, because you guys can use 10% off code like Lefty 10, save you some extra money, and then you get it down at a really good price, and I think that's pretty hard to beat. So but yeah, this was my full review on the Kubey Knives Interflow. Huge shout out to Kevin, as always, for letting me and the others in the group check out so much cool stuff. You're keeping the content rolling for me, and for probably some of us others that, you know, don't get to check out as much stuff. And yeah, always appreciate you, Kev, but I always appreciate you guys too. But I'm gonna wrap this up now. So thank you guys again so much for watching. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your morning, day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.